Welcome to the Unseen Wisdom.
Great to be here.
Today, we're diving into something quite significant, discussions that happened in Parliament recently.
That's right. We've been looking at the Parliament channel recordings.
And specifically, we're focusing on the Central University of Technology, CUT. There were a lot of issues raised.
A lot. It really covers a wide spectrum, from student life right through to, well, high-level governance.
And one thing that really jumped out, something quite concerning, was this recurring theme, or at least allegation, about the university possibly prioritizing foreign nationals over South African citizens for jobs.
Yeah, that came up quite strongly. It's a serious claim and definitely something we need to unpack alongside everything else.
Absolutely. So we'll be looking at, student concerns, accommodation, and SFAS issues, that kind of thing.
Financial matters too. Procurement, spending, debt. It's all in there.
And governance, how the place is run, who makes decisions, and then, of course, this employment equity angle and the hiring practices.
Exactly. It's a complex picture.
So if you want to understand what was discussed, the concerns raised about CUT in Parliament, stick around. And hey, if you find this useful, please give us a like, drop a comment with your thoughts, and definitely subscribe to the Unseen Wisdom. We appreciate the support.
We do. Okay, so where should we start? Maybe with the students. That seemed to be a major focus initially.
Yeah, good idea. The conditions for students, particularly at the Welcome campus, sounded pretty dire.
They really did. We heard about basic things like showers and toilets in the residences being in a state of disrepair.
Not just inconvenient, but potentially unhealthy, right?
Yeah.
There was talk of sewage problems.
Yes, exactly. Sewage issues leading to unsanitary conditions, which, obviously raises health concerns. That's not a conducive environment for studying.
Not at all. And it sounds like students who aren't funded by NSFAS are facing extra difficulties, like a lack of support from the university itself.
That was certainly raised. The lack of specific institutional help for those unfunded students puts them in a really tough spot, struggling to find accommodation and just make ends meet.
Which then pushes them towards off-campus, not accredited places, I suppose.
Precisely. And while the university might cap allowances, the meeting highlighted how this negatively impacts students needing outside accommodation. They end up in potentially unsuitable, maybe even unsafe situations.
Unsafe how? What were the concerns there?
Well, security was a big one. Issues like drugs, alcohol, taverns located near these non-accredited places were mentioned. It creates a difficult atmosphere for students trying to focus.
Yeah, you can imagine it adds another layer of stress. And academically, too, there seem to be problems. Something about exam timetables.
Right. An alleged lack of consultation with the SRC, the Student Representative Council, on exam schedules.
So students end up with multiple exams crammed together.
That was the claim. Multiple exams in a very short time frame, which obviously increases pressure and could hurt their performance.
And the NSFAS issues didn't stop there, did they? There was mention of students being defunded.
Yes, suddenly losing their funding mid-year. For students completely reliant on NSFAS, it throws their entire academic future into jeopardy. It's devastating.
Absolutely devastating. And there were specific issues raised for students with disabilities, too.
Correct. During exams, apparently there were communication breakdowns regarding corrections or changes to papers.
Putting them at a disadvantage.
A clear disadvantage, yeah. It points to a need for much more robust and inclusive processes.
It really does. And this ties into academic exclusion policies as well, doesn't it? There were calls for a rethink.
Yes, a call for a new approach, something more supportive. The argument was for focusing on helping students succeed rather than just excluding them.
Which makes sense if you're also worried about dropout rates.
Exactly. Concerns about dropout rates came up alongside discussions on improving academic progression and retention. How does the university actually support students through their studies?
And a very basic need, just having somewhere to live, lack of beds on campus.
A major shortage, apparently, on both campuses, Welcome and Bloemfontein. It forces so many students into that private market we were just talking about.
So with all these student issues, accommodation, NSFAS, health, exams, what was the proposed solution or next step?
Well, there were strong calls for the Special Investigating Unit, the SIU, to get involved.
To investigate what specifically?
The accreditation process for the private accommodation providers and also the internal NSFAS processes at the university level. A demand for more accountability, basically.
And for immediate health needs.
A push for permanent on-campus doctors at both sites, for proper medical assistance, sick notes, things students really need access to.
Makes sense. And one final big student demand.
Scrapping historical student debt, A huge burden, as we know, preventing graduates from moving forward. That was put firmly on the table.
Okay, so a raft of really serious student concerns. Let's shift gear a bit now to the financial side of things. Procurement, spending. That also seems quite contentious.
Very much so. Allegations of wasteful expenditure, questionable procurement practices. The term benchmarking exercises came up a lot.
Right, benchmarking, so comparing costs with other institutions. But the way CUT did it was being questioned.
Exactly. Serious questions were raised about the justification, the transparency, whether these exercises were actually value for money or just, well, wasteful spending.
Was there a specific example that stood out?
Yes, the purchase of the Toyota building.
Okay.
Concerns that the university paid too much for it and maybe more importantly, didn't have a clear business case for why they needed it or how it would be used.
And then had to spend more money fixing it up.
That seemed to be the implication, yes. Costly repurposing needed afterwards, adding to the sense that the initial purchase wasn't well planned.
And what about insourcing, bringing services back in-house?
That process is ongoing, apparently, but concerns were raised about how effectively vacant positions created by insourcing are actually being filled. Is it efficient? Is it working?
Okay. And then the debt figures.
Yeah.
They sounded huge.
Staggering, really. Outstanding student debt mentioned as over 2.5 billion rand.
Billion, wow.
And on the flip side, NSFAS apparently owes CUT over $1 billion.
So money owed to CUT and money owed by students. It sounds like a very precarious financial position.
It does, which makes the unqualified audit findings seem a bit interesting.
Right. An unqualified audit usually means the books look okay, representationally speaking, but it doesn't mean everything's fine financially.
Exactly. It speaks to the accounting standards, the presentation. It doesn't necessarily reflect underlying financial health or sustainability, especially with those massive debt figures hanging over them.
And underneath that, potential inequities too. Something about academic salaries.
Yes, an independent study was cited, allegedly showing that Black and female academics were being underpaid compared to others.
That's a very serious allegation. Raises huge questions about fairness.
Absolutely. And it connects to wider concerns about budget allocation. Is there a prioritization of administrative salaries over academic ones? That impacts the core mission.
And you see the impact on the ground too, right? Lack of funds for basic maintenance.
Yeah, reports of things like ceilings not being fixed, air conditioning, and ventilation problems not being addressed. Basic upkeep suffering.
Creates a pretty poor working and learning environment.
Definitely. And then there was that really strange situation with the fuel station.
Oh yeah, tell me about that again. On university property.
Yes, apparently leased out for just 100 rand a month.
100 rand. For a fuel station, that seems incredibly low.
It raised a lot of eyebrows. Given the income potential, you have to ask how that deal was ever struck.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And CUC is the subsidiary that was liquidated. More questions there.
Yes, about the financial transactions around its liquidation, whether everything was above board.
And the Department of Roads project that got awarded and then taken back.
Also mentioned, alleged procedural errors in that whole process, adding to this picture of potential financial and administrative issues.
Okay, so the finances sound messy, which naturally leads to questions about how the place is actually run, governance and administration. What came up there?
A really disturbing point was this reported climate of fear.
Fear among staff.
That's what was suggested, yes. Apparently highlighted in an independent assessor's report and echoed by the labor union.
That sounds toxic. Not an environment where people would feel comfortable raising problems.
Exactly. It stifles communication, hinders problem solving, and linked to that were allegations that management might be in denial about the scale of the problem.
If you don't acknowledge the problem, you can't fix it.
Pretty much. Then there was the structure itself. Lots of layers of management, directors of directors.
That sounds bureaucratic and potentially inefficient. Where are the resources going?
That was the underlying question. And then major disputes around the institutional statute, the university's sort of constitution.
What were the disputes about?
Amendments related to terms of office for top leadership, the VC, DVC's registrar.
And the issue was how those changes were made.
Lack of proper consultation, allegedly. The Institutional Forum, IF, representing stakeholders, and the Senate, the academic body, supposedly weren't adequately consulted.
Undermining shared governance.
That's the concern. And the fact the registrar got a permanent post while others have limited terms also caused debate. Why the difference?
And the university council itself, the top body.
Accusations that they were ignoring advice and resolutions from the IF and Senate.
Yeah.
Again, questioning the effectiveness of these internal structures.
It paints a picture of potential dysfunction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Any other admin issues?
Problems with postgraduate student registration delays, inconsistent policy application. Very frustrating for those students.
I bet.
And finally, this quite serious allegation that the university took students to court over protests described as nonviolent.
And refused to drop the charges.
That was the claim, raising questions about the university's approach to student dissent.
Okay, wow. That's a lot on governance. Now let's get to that really sensitive point we touched on earlier. Employment equity and hiring practices. This seems central.
It really did. The university's own employment equity plan and targets were discussed for African, colored, Indian, white staff.
And were the targets seen as adequate? Especially for colored and Indian representation.
Questions were definitely raised about whether the representation levels were high enough and if the targets were ambitious enough to address historical imbalances.
But the biggest flashpoint was this allegation about favoring foreign nationals.
Yes. The claim that qualified South Africans are being overlooked, especially in academic roles, in favor of foreign hires. It's a very serious charge.
Was there a concrete example given?
A specific case was mentioned: a South African black female professional allegedly passed over for a position that went to a foreign national. The details weren't fully laid out, but raising it in Parliament is significant.
It directly challenges the idea of prioritizing local talent, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And concerns were also raised about the number of foreign nationals in junior lecturer roles.
Implying perhaps that opportunities for South African graduates to enter academia are being limited.
That's the concern. Are we developing our own pipeline of academics sufficiently?
And questions about specific appointments, too. A consultant becoming a manager. A junior accountant being more qualified than superiors.
Those examples were brought up, yes, suggesting potential irregularities or at least a lack of clarity in hiring and promotion.
And this runs counter to national policy, right? The Department of Higher Education expects universities to prioritize South Africans.
That's the standard expectation, yes. So these allegations, if true, would be a direct contradiction of that.
Okay. Let's quickly touch on physical resources, too. Overcrowding.
A big issue, apparently. Lecture halls overflowing, students having to listen from outside.
Not exactly conducive to learning.
Not at all. It impacts the quality of the experience, and it raises questions about capacity versus enrollment numbers.
Were there any solutions discussed? Temporary structures?
Yes. Things like reallocating space, using tents for exams, were mentioned as short-term fixes. But they don't solve the underlying need for proper infrastructure.
It's a balancing act, isn't it? Enrollment targets versus the actual space and staff you have.
A very difficult one. And briefly, there was also discussion about the ratio of support staff to academic staff, questioning if that balance is right for the university's core mission.
Right. So with all this going on, what's the role of the Department of Higher Education and Training, DHET, and all this? Are they stepping in?
Well, they confirmed they are monitoring CUT, especially after that independent assessor's report came out.
So they're aware of the issues.
Definitely. And they expect the university to address the concerns raised by stakeholders, students, staff, everyone.
But did they want Parliament involved at this stage?
They seem to suggest that some issues ideally should be resolved internally first, before escalating to parliamentary committees. A preference for institutional autonomy, perhaps, but with oversight.
Interesting. Did the university keep the department in the loop about everything? What about that foreign dean appointment?
No. The department confirmed they weren't informed about that specific appointment, which raises questions about procedure and communication.
Okay. And student mental health. Is the department involved there?
Yes, they mentioned their higher health entity, which is dedicated to supporting student mental well-being across all institutions. That's a recognized need.
And fundamentally, the department sets the enrollment targets and funding levels.
Right, exactly. They play a huge role in shaping the university's operational context.
So given this mountain of issues, it's no surprise there were calls for more drastic action during the meeting.
Absolutely none. The calls for a deep dive forensic investigation by the SIU into the finances and procurement were very strong, very persistent.
People want an independent body to really scrutinize the books.
That's the clear message. And alongside that, demands for management accountability, a sense that things can't just continue as they are.
And a need for real consultation, not just lip service.
Crucial. Genuine engagement with students, unions, the IF that was stressed repeatedly as essential for finding solutions.
And the potential consequences if things don't change.
Stark warnings were issued, including, quite worryingly, the possibility of a campus closure if these critical issues aren't effectively addressed.
Wow. That really underscores the seriousness of the situation.
It really does. The stakes are incredibly high.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive into the parliamentary discussion on CUT, it's revealed a lot.
It certainly has. That allegation about prioritizing foreign nationals over South Africans is obviously a major point of concern, demanding investigation.
But it's nested within this much broader context of problems, student welfare, financial management, governance issues, resource constraints. It's a long list.
A very long list. And it paints a picture of an institution facing really significant systemic challenges.
And just to reiterate for everyone listening, our discussion today is based purely on what was presented and discussed during that parliamentary meeting from the sources we accessed.
We've aimed to give you a fair overview of the concerns raised in that specific forum.
Which leaves us, and you, with some big questions, doesn't it? Does this parliamentary scrutiny actually mean things will change at CUT?
Will student and staff concerns finally be genuinely addressed? Will management be held accountable?
And crucially, will those allegations about hiring practices be investigated thoroughly and transparently? And if proven, will action be taken?
These are the vital questions hanging in the air. We'd genuinely like to hear your thoughts. What do you make of all this? Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, please do. And if you want even more detail, try and find the Parliament channel recordings of the meeting itself. Hearing it directly can offer even more perspective.
Thank you for joining us for this exploration on the unseen wisdom. We'd hope it's been insightful.
We'll be back soon, digging into other complex stories. Until then, take care.
See, do you agree that the current EE plan chooses foreigners above South Africans?
It's not choosing foreigners over South Africans. It's about also factoring our internationalization efforts. And we've got a 10% cap, as you would know. So it's not a matter of choosing South Africans, foreigners over South Africans.
So really, your answer is no?
My answer is I don't think.
Is that a no or yes?
No.
No. All right. Let's look at slide number 10. Let's just look at the engineering, build, environment, and IT section. Colored male, Indian male, chairperson of council, look at that there. 1.0% is permanent academic staff. No Indian female there in that entire faculty. Colored male, 1.6%. No colored female there. Foreigners, altogether, both foreign female and male, 15%. VC, colored males, Indian males and females are South Africans. You have in that faculty alone combined 2%. If you round it off, let's say 4%. Foreign nationals, 15%. What is the reason for that?
Honorable Member, the common reason really for it is about the skills, the internationalization plan, and the readiness to come and work within CUT or the Free State. It's really the pool that we are recruiting from. But we do not dismiss our internationalization policy and the targets there.
You know, I wish you would just be honest, VC, but it's okay. We'll continue. Do you know Professor Noluntu Mpekwa?
I haven't met her directly, yes.
Actually, it's professor, doctor.
Yes.
She holds a BTech, a MTech, and a PhD. Very brilliant black South African female in this country. Do you know that in 2024 she applied for the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, both Environment and Information Technology? Do you know of that?
In 2019? No.
2024.
Oh, last year, yes, yes, yes.
So you do know?
Yes.
Do you confirm that this black African highly qualified professional met the requirements of this position?
The minimum requirement.
Do you agree, do you confirm that she fulfilled the requirements?
Yes, she fulfilled the minimum requirements.
Do you confirm that she was shortlisted and interviewed?
Yes.
Could you kindly tell the country who ended up getting the job? Was it a South African or was it a foreigner?
It was an internal candidate who is a foreign national.
Sorry, BC?
A foreign national female internal candidate.
Is that a scarce skill? The dean of the faculty?
In STEM-related issues, it can be a scarce.
In this instance, I'm putting before you a highly qualified South African black female professional who qualifies. In this instance, that's not a scarce skill because you have someone that can fill the position who is South African. A foreign national was given the position over and above this person.
If I may also answer this, that process was opened twice, precisely also because of the pool of applicants that we had, where we wanted to make sure there is enough diversity in terms of female representation, South Africans, and especially also because of
you see, I've been very patient with you, and I've allowed you to patronize me on many occasions. This time I'm not going to allow it. What you have here is the position of dean is open. There is a South African black female who has applied and who is qualified. She holds a doctorate. She qualifies for that position. She doesn't get it. The person who gets it is a foreign national. That is not a scarce skill. The law requires that the only time you can do what you did is if it is a scarce skill. You disregarded, your institution disregarded a black female professional. There's no way around that. And whether you believe it or like it or not, CUT appears to be favoring foreign nationals above South Africans, even if they are qualified. And that's what that same stat in that faculty speaks to, of 15% of foreign nationals. And when we go there, even in your other slides, when you speak about junior lecturers and all of that kind of stuff, we will see how South Africans are lesser number than foreign nationals. In practicality, I urge you, VC, as we go further, that we see this problem and we take accountability for it, rather than explaining it away. This highly qualified female South African has been disadvantaged, intentionally so. And according to our laws, she should have been the person. Not preference, I don't know her. We just did research. But based on the law, what the institution has done is disadvantage her. The Department of Higher Education, did you approve this the appointment of a foreign national over South African?
We are also surprised. Ordinarily, the university would have written to us, particularly to give us notice that they are making that appointment for visa purposes. We didn't get that letter.
VC, kindly explain.
Chair, I think as I mentioned through the chair, honourable member, the candidate was an internal candidate that already has...
VC, are you listening to what the department is saying? There's a particular process. If you want to do what you did, you must inform the department you didn't.
No, that wasn't done, as far as I know.
We just heard that wasn't done. You didn't do it. The entire procedure was wrong. You know why? I'll tell you why. VC, your institution favors foreign nationals over South African citizens, even if they hold PhDs. That's why.